Good morning and welcome back to the Closers Inner Circle podcast with your host Denise Griffitts and Ben Gay III. We are officially in week 9 of our Sales Infiltration Masterclass series, and today's conversation centers around a chapter that, excuse me, starts on page 257 in the Closers Part 2. Now, this one's a powerhouse, and this is why we're repeating it from last year, but with a little bit more structure. That chapter is packed with insights that can dramatically shift how you approach complex sales conversations. And if you're new to this series or catching up, don't worry, we've got you. But we do recommend going back and listening to weeks 1 through 8. Each episode builds upon the last, gradually layering in the skills and the mindset needed to fully absorb the advanced techniques that we're now exploring with you, our audience. And today's episode continues to deepen your understanding of sales infiltration, and it's one of the most powerful strategies in the professional closer's toolkit. It's not about what you say, it's how, when, and why you say it that truly makes a difference. And don't forget, if you don't already have the Closers Parts 1 and 2, now is the time. These books are more than reference guides. They're known as the sales Bibles, and they are the I'm losing the voice. They're the blueprint for everything that we're teaching in this series, straight from the mind of Ben Gay III himself. Good morning, Ben. It's Wednesday, and it's time for you to tell our audience where they can get their copies of the Closers books with free shipping. That's important, free shipping.
Yeah, and signed and dated with a lifetime money back guarantee.
I
Uh,
always forget that part.
yeah,
Sorry.
the best place, there's lots of places you can get the closers, new, used, etc. But the best place to get them with all the features you and I just described is go to stores, stores dot ebay dot com / all one word, Ronzoni Books, RONZONEBOOKS. And if you order before 2 o'clock, sometimes we press that a little bit, but if you order before 2 o'clock, goes out the same day. We had a person who ordered from Ronzoni Books the other day on a Saturday. I assume they figured they would get we would see the order on Monday. Well, we saw it on Saturday. We work 7 days a week, or we're in and around the office 7 days a week. So we got it on Saturday. It went out priority mail Saturday afternoon, and they got it Tuesday morning, yesterday morning in New York from California. And they called just amazed. My God, you said you, well, the truth is, we got the order on Saturday. That helped. It was a big enough order to upgrade it to priority mail. That helped. And had some of the weekend to travel. But I got the biggest kick out of their amazement. We call it sudden service. And another quick one, a lady ordered, we're in Placerville, California, in Northern California. A lady who I didn't know, you didn't know her, ordered a book, and she lived in Placerville, California. Well, when you live in a small town, what frequently happens to the mail is it goes to a distribution center. In our case, it's Sacramento, 25 miles away. They fiddle with it, send it back where it came from to Placerville, then it gets delivered. So if I mail a letter to my next door neighbor, it might take 3 or 4 days to get there, first class. We know the proper people at the post office. So I told them, when you take this to the post office, show it to I'm not going to name him because he's probably getting in trouble. Show it to our favorite guy and have him put it in the local mail stream. So it went from the front desk to the Placerville delivery thing. She ordered it on Monday. I'm making up days, I think. She ordered it on Monday and got it on Tuesday. And she called and said, "This isn't possible." She thought we looked up her address and hand delivered it to her house.
And listen,
So,
I understand about the post office. Listen, last month I sent the post office. I'm not going to even say what I really think of them. I think my tone of voice might do the trick. But I mailed my renewal for a grossly expensive, regular small mailbox in my mailbox in my next little town. It's 3 miles away. Seriously, it's 3 miles away. That was last month. They still don't have it. It never arrived. So did my tone tell you what I thought?
I didn't hear, if that was a question, I didn't hear
You didn't hear my nasty tone? I'm gonna have to do better. So,
it.
okay. Well, and that's the thing about these books when you and this is the thing about you, Ben, when you say you're going to do something, you do it.
Well, it makes life simpler. You don't have to spend a lot of time explaining why you didn't do something. So we like to surprise them. As I said, we call our shipping sudden service. And the reason is I don't want somebody calling, and we send a thank you postcard for every order. And I had to hold it back. I changed the system where we don't mail that for a day or two because most of the books go out media mail or book, what used to be called book rate. And the postcard was beating the book to the house or
Oh,
the office. So they'd call, well, I got the thank you card and I really appreciate that, but where's the book? So we had to delay the postcard a day or two so it didn't beat the book there.
well,
But
that
by and
makes
large,
sense.
we just take great pride. Gigi in her jewelry business, Gigi, for you new listeners, is my lovely wife who runs a vintage jewelry business
And
out of the
she's my
same
partner in
office.
crime. When I have a complaint, I go straight to Gigi.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me reversion that. When I have a complaint with Ben, I go straight to Gigi.
That's not fair.
I know, we love it.
But she has sold thousands of pieces of jewelry and, collections and individual pieces and so on over the years. She has a 100% positive rating, never had a bad one. Uh, I don't know all the things that eBay, how they rate business, but every single one, GD, is as high as you can get. One, she sells good stuff. It's packaged carefully. It's not broken when it arrives. Our shipping department takes special care of her stuff and sudden service. So she has, and a lot of her stuff goes first class. So if you order from her, no matter where you are in the country, overseas might be different, but wherever you are in the country, you'll have it in a day or two. And it just, everybody like it increases orders because you have better ratings. They're not afraid to order from you. It cuts down time. You don't have to spend any time on the phone explaining where the book or the earring is. And everybody's happy, and happy people tell other people. You and I have discussed this before. I think it may be a made up statistic, but a happy customer will tell two or three people how happy they were with your service. An unhappy customer will tell 17 people how unhappy they were with your service. So we
Oh,
do it
it's
because,
even worse than that. Go to Trustpilot. Oh, Lord.
oh, really?
If they're really, if you did right by them, it's going to be good. But if it's bad, it's really bad. And everybody sees it. Excuse me, and everybody sees it. Trustpilot, a lot of those places, if you mess with somebody, they'll get you. They have means these days.
Well, it makes life one, it's morally right. That's the real issue. But on top of that, it just makes everything go easier. Great service increases sales, cuts down on complaints, increases positive feedback. There's just nothing wrong with doing it right, and no downside that I can think of.
No,
So
not at all.
we enjoy doing that. Well, you had some things you wanted to discuss today. Tell me what they are.
I did. Last week, as we were wrapping up the show at the very end of it, you mentioned something that really caught my attention because you said you would be sharing stories about some very well-known people that you've known and worked with and frankly hired over the years. And I believe today that we're diving into a few of those relationships, including your mentor, the legendary Dr. Napoleon Hill, your former boss, William Penn Patrick, who was the founder of Holiday Magic, where you were the president. And of course, the great Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, who is widely recognized for his work, The Power of Positive Thinking. I've been looking forward to this. I've heard a lot of your stories, but I know you've got so many of them that you probably haven't shared on this podcast yet. So I'm going to take my raspy voice and get out of your way and let you just have at it.
Well, that's nice of you. Feel free to jump in anywhere where you have a question or
I will.
I've contradicted something I said earlier, which is also true. I don't work in this type of situation. I don't work off scripts. Uh, my total notes, for instance, on Dr. Napoleon Hill are on a list I have in front of me, Dr. Napoleon Hill.
That's
That's
it?
it.
Yeah, but
So,
you knew him. I
yeah.
mean, he was
So,
your friend. He was your, down here we would call it a parent. That's your godfather. He was with you until he passed away.
yeah, 2.5 years, last 2.5 years of his life, I was blessed to have him. And of course, in the last 5, 6 months, it was more infrequent and on the phone. But he was a wonderful gentleman and came along in my life at just the right time. I was 25 years old, head of a company doing adjusted for inflation $3 billion a year. Uh, we were the largest MLM, now they call it network marketing, uh, direct sales organization in the world, significantly larger than the others. And I'm a high school graduate and 25 years old. So when Bill Patrick, the owner, William Penn Patrick, Bill Patrick, the owner of Holiday Magic, showed up at my door with this little old man on a cane, at first, I thought, oh, there goes half a day. I've got to entertain one of Bill's old friends. Then I discovered it was Dr. Napoleon Hill, so my attitude changed somewhat. And then I still thought, well, you're babysitting him. Uh, he's out here in the office, and Bill doesn't know what to do with him. So he's deposited him in my office. Well, it turned out he'd hired him to be my mentor, coach, friend. And as I started to say, at just the right time, I was 25, he was 84. And so he was biologically old enough to be my great grandfather. And if you could think back, if you were blessed to have a wise grandfather, great grandfather in your lineage, uh, you can imagine what you could have learned from them if you'd been smart enough to sit at their feet, ask questions, and shut up. I wasn't that person until I met Dr. Hill. And even then, I was a little slow to the party because I was full of myself. Hi, I'm Ben Gay, president of Holiday Magic
Yeah, but
Cosmetics.
you were
And
25 years old. I mean, how
yeah,
many
yeah.
25-year-olds can you even stand to be around? That's a serious question. I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Nothing worse than a 13-year-old extremely intelligent person. Not that I was one, but we have a nephew like that. And one day, uh, one of the uncles asked him a question, and he looked at him kindly and said, let me see how I can explain this to you where you'll understand it. And I thought,
Ouch.
if he killed him right now, I would testify on his behalf.
Yeah, it would be an accidental. Oh, I stepped on him. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt him or kill him. Yeah, but he
There,
quit
there,
talking. That was a plus.
there was a lot of truth, though, in that statement, impertinent and impolite as it was, because the kid, he's now a medical researcher and so on, uh, knows things he knows things I don't even know to ask questions about. So,
Right.
bright guy. But anyway, with Dr. Hill, I thought I was babysitting for a while, and then we went to have lunch, and I changed my attitude significantly. And then I invited him to stay at our house, which became the regular routine. But the first time it was sort of a surprise. Had to go get him out of the hotel he had already checked into. And by morning, I was a convert. He was kind, gentle, soft spoken, had a cultured Southern accent. Uh, and so you would know he was from South Carolina, but you wouldn't think he was a hillbilly by any means. And he set up some rules early on. Bill had told me this is the way we would do it, but until I heard it from Dr. Hill, it didn't even cross my mind it was true, in that he would never question me. Serious questions could be misinterpreted as an argument in front of anyone else. He would never disagree with me in front of anyone else unless I asked him a direct question. All criticisms and suggestions would be one-on-one. And I've told you this, I used to have an office door. That's not a great surprise, but I had an office door that went click when it was shut. And if we were having a meeting, Dr. Hill always sat to my left at the end of this big conference table that was my desk. And when I heard the click, the last person going out, shutting the door, if out of my peripheral vision I saw his head come up, I'd think, uh-oh, he's got something to share with me. And inevitably he did. But it was always gentle and kind and just a little nudge. If you're 84, you can see things a 25-year-old can't see. Now, all that said, he didn't walk on water. You know, I've had people say, well, what was it like to be in the same room with Napoleon Hill? Well, if he wasn't introduced to you as Napoleon Hill, it was the same as being in the room with any 84-year-old gentleman who physically was starting down the hill, but mentally was still extremely sharp. So it wasn't everything he uttered wasn't a life-changing moment. In fact, he spent a lot of time, he'd had 3 or 4 marriages, I think 3 divorces and an annulment and so on, and was barely on speaking terms with some of his kids. I don't know how many he had, I've forgotten. And so when we were up at the house, a lot of his questions were based on the relationship I had with my wife at the time. She's since passed away, with my wife and my son. And he said on more than one occasion, Ben, I would give anything in the world to have a good relationship with my family. So the great Dr. Napoleon Hill didn't have it all figured out. He just had a bunch of it figured out. And Think and Grow Rich, his most famous work and probably the best one of all time. He and Earl Nightingale at different times said the same thing to me. He said he wrote Think and Grow Rich too early in his career because he spent the rest of his life trying to beat it, and he never could. And Earl Nightingale said he wrote and recorded The Strangest Secret too early in his career and spent the rest of it trying to write and record something better, and he never achieved it. The Strangest Secret, you could take everything Earl Nightingale said and did in his life, and if all you were left with was a recording of The Strangest Secret, mine is a record, uh, the one I was given the day I joined Holiday Magic. If that's all you had, you got Earl Nightingale. That was the beginning and end. And he would expand. You know, I'd learned many things over dinner with him as he was talking about something and then expanding on it and so on. But 99% of everything I learned from Earl Nightingale was in a 33 and a third PMs. I just got it out to make sure that was right. I didn't know if it was a 78 or a 33 and a third recording given to me by Bill Dempsey for free. And he also gave me The Strangest, Think and Grow Rich at the same time, one in each hand. And 2 years later, both of the gentlemen were working for me, and I was president of the company. So that's one of those, if you were doing a movie, when he handed me the book and the record, uh, the light in the movie would have changed, or zoom in on the hands or something, because it was literally a life-changing moment. Now, on the other hand, I have a copy of Think and Grow Rich here that was given to me by a friend who worked for me years ago and is still a good friend, that she found at a garage sale for 50 cents. And then when you open it up, on the first blank page, it says, to Mrs. Grace Dixon, with best wishes, Napoleon Hill. The interesting thing about the book, though, is, and I've been in the publishing, marketing, sales business long enough to know, what happened was somehow she found out Dr. Napoleon Hill was coming to town. She went and heard him. Then she got in a line and paid for the book, probably $4.95 or something back then. And then got in another line. This was the 1945 edition of his 1937 book. Got in another line and had him sign it. Then she took it home, stuck it in her bookcase, and there it stayed for 60, 70 years. How do I know that? The front of the book is cherry red, like it came from the printers. The back of the book is cherry red. The spine of the book is bleached out. You almost can't read Think and Grow Rich because she stuck it in her bookcase and there it stayed. And I further know that because when I opened it up, when Sandra Nomer gave it to me, I discovered that the only part of the spine that had ever been cracked was when Dr. Hill opened the book to sign on the first page. The rest of the book has never been opened or touched. And I, of course, am not going to do it. It makes a better story the way it is. So she got Think and Grow Rich in the late 40s, probably, and took it home, stuck it in her bookcase. And I'll bet you her life didn't change at all, except for maybe telling a few obscure friends she met Dr. Hill. I was handed a copy of Think and Grow Rich by Bill Dempsey Wednesday, September 15th, 1965, at about 1:05 p.m. I know that because the meeting started at noon. It ran an hour, and on the way out the door, he gave me this book and Earl's recording. I went home and listened to the recording, started reading the book. I've read it hundreds of times cumulatively over the years, and I have it on my calendar to read it once a year. So the difference between Grace Dixon and me is she paid for the book and got nothing out of it. Absolutely not. Oh, I just looked up at the top, it written in handwriting right above Dr. Hill's signature. I've never noticed it. She paid $5 for the book. So she spent five, I got mine for free. She didn't get The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. I got mine for free. I read them, listened to them, put them to use. And you and I are talking today because on Wednesday, September 15th, Bill Dempsey handed me those two copies, minus them. And then Bill Patrick hired Dr. Hill for me. And I hired Earl Nightingale to be the voice of Holiday Magic and all of our related companies. So getting information is wonderful. You've been in people's libraries. In fact, your library is like that, where you
Oh, yeah.
have
Yeah.
thousands of books. The difference is you've read most of them.
I've read
And
all of them. I
yeah,
might have
and at
skimmed
least
some of them, but I've read every single book in here, in my bedroom, in my garage. I've got wall-to-wall bookshelves in my garage, believe it or not. They came from
unfortunately
a
for a lot
house
of
that
people,
wouldn't
those
go in here, so I put them
un,
in the garage. But I read
unfortunately for people,
everything.
those are trophy cases.
Oh, no, 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 I
Look how
read.
smart I am. I bought all these books.
Yeah.
Most people haven't read any of them.
And
Dr.
that's a
Hill,
shame. And I wanted to kind of interrupt just a bit because so many people, you and I have talked about this on the show, and we're having just our conversations on the phone and catching up. But I will often hear, and you've heard it, people say, I just don't know what the big secret is. It's easy. He tells you multiple times, I'm talking about Dr. Napoleon Hill, take action. It's easy. Take action. Read the book. Listen to these people. Do something with it. Take action. There's no big secret.
yeah, and break it down. People say, how do you read so much? You're busy. Well, no matter where I am, right now, I'm sitting next to, in addition to all the quote books and things I have around me at all times that I'm into and out of all the time, I have a stack of books right next to my computer desk that I'm in the process of reading. By the process, I mean I start with the top book and work down, and when I'm done, I either put it in my treasure chest, or I give it away to somebody, figuring it's better that somebody else reads it than it's a trophy in my bookcase. A few feet away is my working desk, all things other than computer. There's a stack of books next to it. In the bathroom I use, Judy doesn't allow me in the nice bathroom. In the
Every time
bathroom,
you tell me that, I just lose it. I'll be laughing for the rest of the day, so thank you for that.
I'm sure it's nice. I've never been allowed in it, but it sounds like it might be nice. Two sinks, everything, shower and a tub. In my little half bath, there's a sink and a toilet and my stack of books, my bathroom books. Then next to the bed is a stack of books. And I have in my car a big oversized briefcase that I don't do anything with but put books in. So if I'm stuck somewhere in traffic or in a waiting room or whatever, I've got something to read. And I read in that spare time. And it can be a page. It doesn't have to be you read the whole book or a chapter, you read a page. So I have 5 stacks in progress at all time. I have at least 5 books, the top one in each stack, actively being read, some more than others. So there's never a time where I feel, oh my God, I've got to stop what I'm doing and read for an hour. I read when the time is available, and there's lots of time available that people don't realize. I don't spend any time waiting aimlessly for anything. If I got 5 minutes between phone calls and I don't want to get tied up in anything else, I read for 5 minutes. And years ago, here's a little tip, bonus tip. I don't know if it's still on the market, but if it's not, there's others. Years ago, I was a John Kennedy fan, President Kennedy. I walk like him. I put my hand in my side coat pocket like he did. I was just enthralled with young John Kennedy. And among the things he did and recommended was he took the Evelyn Woods speed reading course,
I
and he could
forgot about
read.
that. I knew
Yeah,
that, and I had completely forgotten about that.
well, because he said it was a good idea, I did it. And I got up to 3,500 words a minute with 90+% comprehension, which is a lot more comprehension than most people have if they read it 10 words a minute. So it enabled me to read quickly. I haven't measured myself in years, but I know that I read faster than most people because if something comes on, on television or whatever that more than one of us are looking at, I'm always done first. So most of the skill must still be with me. So take a course that enables you to read faster, increases your comprehension, get books within arm's length of you at all times. 5, in my case, maybe yours would be 10 stacks or 2 stacks, but get books available. If you have to think about what you're going to read and get up and find it, you're screwed. It's too late.
Yeah, it
If,
is.
however, all you got to do is reach down to the stack and grab the next one in order, oddly enough, the next one on my stack here beside the computer desk is one I've read several times, and you have it by M. Lamont Bowens, our adopted
Your
son.
son, right. I do
Don't let
have it.
your past hold you back. And I put it in the stack because there was something in it I wanted to read again and I didn't have time to look for it. So I just grabbed it out of another bookcase, put it in the stack, and I'll find what I was looking for in the next day or two.
Sticky
And
notes, they're your friends. I have to
so,
tell you, you're talking about Evelyn Woods. I had discovered this about myself many, many years ago, and it's purely by accident, but I was reading literally at 3 years old. I was an introverted child. My mom kept having babies, which just infuriated me. I was like, what do you... Later, as I got older, I asked her, well, she didn't have that many, but it seemed like, but I remember asking her, you didn't know what caused that? And she didn't hit me, but I think she could have. She was little. She was only about 5 foot, nothing much and a half. And I was, 5'7" at 10 years old, but she jumped like a flea, but she didn't jump me that time. But I remember years ago, and I think it was on my Kindle. I'm not entirely sure. But once I start focusing on something, I'll realize that I'm now focused on the center, the exact center of the page. And there's a big, almost invisible circle there. And I'm looking at that, and my peripheral vision, so to speak, is reading everything beyond, up, down,
mhm.
right. And I'm literally reading the whole page kind of at a glance.
Well, Evelyn Woods teaches something similar.
Really?
You
I
don't
learned it
read
all by
words.
myself. Yeah, you
Yeah,
don't.
you read
Yeah.
phrases.
Ah,
a sentence, or it may be part of a sentence, but from the left binding to the right edge is a word. So I can skim down. Um, not too long ago, someone published a list of their favorite people or something. And I want to know if somebody said, "Are you on it?" And I said, "Well, probably, we're good friends." So I glanced at it and said, "No, I'm not on it." And they said, "How'd you read it that fast?" I said, "I didn't read. I just sort of did what you did. I didn't read everybody's name, but Bengay the third doesn't go all the way across the page, so that eliminates half the names right there." But it was the Evelyn Woods technique. I just looked at it. I'm looking for a short name. Roman numeral 3 sets me further apart.
right,
And
right.
so all I have to do is get my eyes on it and focused, and I know whether I'm there or not. That's perhaps a bit of a stretch, but that's speed reading, whole phrases at a time. Or in your
Mhm.
case, it sounds like maybe a photographic memory at work there. Focus on the middle of the
Partially,
page and get the rest of the page.
yeah,
That's amazing.
partially. And here I was thinking I was just brilliant because I stumbled on it myself and she already taught it. So now I don't feel nearly as smart as I did 10 minutes ago. But but it's always worked for me. I mean, I can pick up any kind of book. I can pick up anything, but uh, it doesn't happen instantly. I'll have to realize that I'm focused on something, and then all of a sudden that invisible circle pops up, and I'm on. Off I go.
Wow.
Yeah,
I envy that. I'm not sure how you teach that to someone, I think,
I don't know.
other than look for
It's just
phrases, but
natural for me. I didn't know
yeah,
that it wasn't natural for most people.
it's some sort of neurological disease.
Well, there is that. I often ask my mother, "Did you mash my soft spot too hard? I need to know." She would just laugh at me. And I
Well,
think while she was laughing, she actually did it. Who knows?
heading on down the list, next one beneath Dr. Napoleon Hill on the list, I sort of have when I'm asked that question of where, who are these people, is William Penn Patrick. He was the founder, the owner, the first president, and then chairman of the board of Holiday Magic Cosmetics and all of its subsidiary companies. In time, we had a motor oil additive company called Stay Power, not unlike STP, but with our marketing plan. Bob Cummings, Vitamins, the old movie star who was known for being healthy. Bill had worked for him years ago at NutriBio, so it became an ego thing to hire him to work for us. And obviously, we put a cosmetic line around him and a home care cleaning products company, and several other companies. In time, many of them got to be as big as Holiday Magic, but Holiday Magic was the starting point. Bill Patrick was the guy. He was imposing, about 6'3" or 6'4", I'm guessing, uh, ruggedly handsome, and a natural charmer. When you came in contact with Bill Patrick, it was a moment and you knew it. Women loved him and the men respected him. And I joined Holiday Magic not with him, but with a local distributor in Atlanta, Bill Dempsey. But in time, I started winning contests. I say that was me and Jimmy Rucker, my business partner. And so we sort of came to their attention. So when Bill Patrick came to Atlanta, for instance, to do a regional meeting, um, he would ask, because he saw the checks going to us, he would ask to meet us. And then he asked me to go on a 25 city tour with him and sort of be his MC and cover guy to make sure he didn't get trapped with certain people for endless periods of time. And we became buddies, but I still understood the pecking order. He was with William Penn Patrick, and I wasn't. And then slowly but surely, my introductions of him got so long. He said, "We'll separate now. Either one of us can fill a room. I don't need you. And your introduction is as long as my talk, and your introduction has a lot of my talk in it." So he caught me, I guess, plagiarizing. So we We started traveling separately, but by then I had won the national contest, became president of the company, etc. And that's the good news. Bill Patrick was like knowing Shakespeare or some great historical figure, great voice, could quote things that were life changing. Almost, he didn't take credit for them, but it was almost as if he had written it and now he was sharing it with you. I've only seen one person who could do that. Father Lee Stevens was a monk at the prep school I went to, St. Andrews in Tennessee, and he once gave a talk as quoting Jesus Christ. And he was a handsome guy, had been an actor, bit part actor in his youth. We used to look for him in films and see the credit. Lee Stevens was his name before he became Father Lee Stevens. And when he got through with his talk, I had lost track of the fact that was Lee Stevens quoting Jesus. It was Jesus talking because he was so effective and such a great speaker and had been an actor. So I never forgot that. I know right where I was sitting when it dawned on me, and I had to almost slap myself. No, that's not Jesus. That's Father Stevens. Bill Patrick had that ability. You could lose track, and you'd think you were talking, or he was had become Aristotle or somebody. And then he and my father had a friendly rivalry. I assume it was friendly. My father was my father. Bill Patrick wanted credit for everything I achieved. So there was this friendly rivalry of who was the greatest influence in my life. And yeah,
Well,
it's
from
it's
what I've
hard.
heard from your dad, okay, keep going. I can't wait.
It was my father, uh,
No, really?
but he had years to do it. Where Bill Patrick, had 3 or 4 years, 5 years maximum to do it. So Dad had far more impact, long term, grand total. But Bill was a close second. But he used to always. One day I'll clean up this story. One day we flew into Atlanta in our new Learjet, and Bill said, "Make sure your father picks us up. We'll be over on the private side of the field near Butler Aviation. He'll be able to pull right up and everything." And I said, "Okay, I'll tell him if he's available. I'm sure he'll do it." "No, no, have him do it." Well, what Bill wanted was he wanted my father standing there when we pulled up in the Learjet, which in the late 60s was a much bigger deal than it is now.
Is this the Learjet that Napoleon Hill loved to ride in?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He would make up reasons to come see me if I'd send the Learjet for him. If he was just going to fly first class commercial, frequently something would come up and he couldn't make it.
Really? I
Yeah.
wouldn't expect
Yeah.
that from you.
But he loved riding in
I'm
the
being
Learjet
sardonic.
and all the attention he got as a result. So
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
Bill must have asked me 5 times. Now your father is coming. Your father is coming. Well, what he wanted was Dad to be standing there when he pulled up in the Learjet, sitting co-pilot, and I knew they would pull the plane in where a co-pilot would be on the side where the parking lot was, and my father would be. That was the whole thing. 2 weeks of make sure your father comes, make sure your father comes. So the we land and pull up, and there's my dad. I could see him standing, he pulled his car inside the gates, a big Buick Roadmaster, and he's leaning against the front of the hood of the car, the grill. I don't know if he was cleaning his fingernails or trimming them, but anyway, looking down, he didn't even look up at the Learjet.
Oh, no.
And
Poor Bill.
fiddling with his fingernails. And so Bill waited a second, and when my father didn't drop to his knees in awe, he popped open the door and walked down the 2 or 3 steps. And Dad still didn't look up. Bill had to go to him. Naturally, would have been for the visitor, my father, to walk towards the plane. He made Bill walk all the way over to him. And when he got there, I forgot this little setup you should know. There were two black Learjets parked right there with gold records on them, painted all over them. and one was soul brother number one, and the other one was soul brother number two. And so just as Bill got close to my father, Dad looked up, nodded at the two black Learjets and said, "The singer's got two of them." It was James Brown.
I
And
figured it had to be with soul. Do
yeah,
you think your dad kind of figured out what was going to happen and he was just doing him? He was
Dad was
just
a very
being
wise
himself,
man. Yeah, he knew
right?
the game and outplayed him.
It
Bill
sounds
Bill
like it.
Patrick was playing checkers. Dad was playing chess. It was a withering comment, and I cleaned up the comment a little bit. You can let your imagination run wild, but
Done.
Dad was not impressed that Bill had a Learjet.
Oh,
James Brown had two
two.
Learjets.
I've never heard that story. That's going to be in the back of my head all day long. Now, of course, I'm going to have to go to YouTube and listen to some James Brown. So it's
So
on my list
anyway,
of
that
things
that
to
was
do.
that was William Penn Patrick, the public persona, godlike, all-knowing, all-seeing. My part of my introduction at the end, this is sort of embarrassing now, but I meant it at the time, I would say, and now, ladies and gentlemen, the founder of Holiday Magic, the president of Holiday Magic, the chairman of the board of Holiday Magic, and a man for whom I would gladly at this very moment lay down my life, Mr.
Oh,
William Penn Patrick. As I said, it's sort of embarrassing now, but I was a kid and I meant it at the time. Unless somebody had asked me to lay down my life, I might have changed my mind at the
really? Yeah,
last
but
moment.
that makes sense. I mean, I don't find anything off about that at all. I mean, you were where you were because of him. Your life had changed dramatically because of
Absolutely.
him. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me.
Well, I said it and I wouldn't now, but that's the back half of the story. We ran into some difficult times. One time I had to lay off 125 people, and Bill said, "We'll send out a memo." I said, "No, I will do it one at a time in my office." I faced 125 people. There might have been a few where a whole department came in, but I faced down and laid off 125 people. Fortunately, most of them were temporary. We got them back before they found something better to do. But the company was in legal trouble and financial trouble. And Bill became a different person. He came in my office one day and he said, "We've got to do this and this and this." And I said, "Bill, I'm already, I was working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the road, giving over 300 speeches a year. Uh, One time I gave 33 speeches in 11 days in 33 different cities. And and he says, "We've got to work harder." I said, "No, there aren't enough hours in the day." "Well, we've got to double our income." I said, "Bill, I know um, I am producing as much money as I can do without lying, cheating, and stealing," which was a phrase he taught me that we don't do. We don't lie, cheat, and steal. "Without lying, cheating, and stealing, this is how much money we can bring in. What we need to do is cut back on expenses. 42 airplanes might be a starting point, uh, a Gulfstream, the Learjet, a Ford Tri-Motor, a P-51 World War II fighter plane in which he lost his life a couple of years, 3 years later, uh, et cetera. The 130-foot yacht, the Principians, tied up in Sausalito, that might be something we could unload. The expenses that go with the 3,500 High Valley Ranch might be another one. And I started running through all of his hobbies. I said, "I'm making plenty of money. Somewhere we're spending too much, and somewhere was Bill." And he said to me in that meeting, he never sat down, he was standing at the end of my desk, and he said, "If I can't get you to lie, cheat, and steal, I'll find somebody who will." And then he left the office. Well, about 6 months later, he found somebody who would. We had a distributor in Chicago who was sort of a wannabe mafia guy, and he brought him in to replace me. I was exiled to Canada to save the company. That's not really important. Save the company in Canada. That's not really important. I was exiled to Canada to get me out of sight so I wouldn't start a rival company. And so Bill and my relationship changed dramatically when he said, I'll find somebody who will lie, cheat, and steal. Suddenly he wasn't Aristotle anymore. He was a tall, handsome con man. And I got it. Maybe he always had been. Maybe that old saying, pressure doesn't create a good man or something. It
Right.
reveals what character there is. And under that pressure, we revealed what was there. And then Bill went on. They went broke, so he probably couldn't have paid me anyway at the very end. But after I left, the he went on to steal $14 million in stock options and this and that. And I had just canceled them. Didn't have to say the company went out of business. That came later. He just canceled them. And some of that money was money my father and some of his friends had invested because I let them in on the
Mm.
special deal. And so I spent a good deal of time earning enough money later to pay them back, at least make them whole again. So William Penn Patrick, the God, was also William Penn Patrick, the thief. And he wound up dead and broke, killed in a plane crash up at the ranch, flying recklessly. Rather quickly, the big house in Marin County disappeared. His wife Marie was killed in a traffic accident on the Santa Fe Richmond Bridge, rear-ended by somebody because her car broke down. And grand total at one time, Bill was worth, I'm not sure who figured it, but a guy I trust told me because he did the books, Bill was worth $42 million. When he died, there was a suitcase with $386,000 cash in it with a note, if anything happens to WPP, William Penn Patrick, give this to Marie. So 42 million dribbled down to 386,000. Then she died. And as I said, the Bill Patrick holiday magic memory was, as we say in the South, gone with the wind. So he's remains a tremendous influence in my life, but now it's both positive and negative. And
I
I've
wonder what happened to him. That's
well, as
that's a
as the
horrifying
saying
story.
goes, pressure doesn't create character, it reveals what
Yeah.
character there is. Maybe he's just one of those people, as long as things are going well, he could afford to be honest.
Guess we'll never know, but it
Yeah,
sounds highly likely. What a
but
shame. That's just a
a
terrible
sad ending.
shame.
And
Yeah.
I've waited to tell stories like that until most of the people involved are gone. I'm 82 and I was the kid in the organization at 25, 23 when I started, 25 when I became president. So if you were alive in those days and drastically affected positively by William Penn Patrick, I'm not destroying your life. There are very few people around who were there anyway. In fact, he ran for governor of California against Ronald Reagan,
Oh
came within
my.
came within one vote of getting the endorsement of the Republican State Central Committee.
Huh.
He ran for president on some obscure patriot type uh, ticket, didn't amount to anything. And the plan was to move me up the line and get me involved in politics. We had Joe Schell, who was Speaker of the Assembly in California, left that job and came to work for us in the building as a political influence. We had Jane Alexander. Some of your listeners probably saw a movie called Citizen Jane, where this lady found out that a person she knew well had killed her aunt or her mother or something, spent her life tracking him down and finally put him in prison for it. She was on our team, as tough as nails. If I woke up one morning, I was told Jane Alexander had decided she hated me, I'd move to Switzerland, or someplace where I could hide. She was just tough as could be. So I had this team that was developed to back Bill Patrick for governor, and then a half-hearted attempt at president. And the team was turned in my direction to put me in Congress and then maybe as senator, and then ultimately maybe as president. That was my goal. I had a plaque on my office door that said Ben F. Gay III, President, USA. That was my I am. And but when Bill went crazy, that's one term for it, and then died, broke, obviously all that came apart. And when I had to finance all those people to uh, drive home my political aspirations, I lost interest. It was a multi-million-dollar effort with no guarantee of success. And if you had to label me, I'm not an extreme anything. I'm a middle of the road, common sense type person, but I lean to the right. I'm sort of conservative. The seat I would be running for in Congress, we lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, would be the seat that Nancy Pelosi now holds. Of course, we're going back many years ago. She wasn't a factor, but the area was a factor, meaning if I had stuck with my views and been outspoken like Bill, who was an extreme conservative, I probably wouldn't have made it anyway. Somewhere along the line, the left wing San Francisco wave would have caught up with me. So those are those sort of what ifs. What if this happened? What if this had happened differently? I have one what if in my life that they're probably little minor ones, but if I'd done this or if I'd done that, and my answer to that when anybody asks me, and especially if Gigi's sitting there, I said, honey, I wouldn't affect any part of my past that would affect me sitting here with you as your husband. Now, if there
Right.
were little twists and turns here and there, fine, that would be interesting. But if it affected the end result, and I've had some bad things happen to me, or I caused them to happen to me, but they were necessary, or I wouldn't be with Gigi today. So, good, bad, indifferent, uh, anything that changes that, I wouldn't do. But a what if it didn't affect me being with Gigi today? My father imported beef. He was a food broker, and among his lines was importing beef from Australia and New Zealand, but Tutman Thurlow. And they either owned or were owned by the Blue Star lines. Those are the shipping. They have uh, cruise ships and freighters and all sorts of things. The Blue Star lines. The chairman of the board of Blue Star Lines said to my father, I've met your son. He's an interesting guy. Here's the deal. I will give him a letter that he can present to the captain of any Blue Star ship anywhere in the world, that they hire him as soon as he walks up, and he can leave whenever he wants, having gone wherever he wanted in the world, and get on the next ship, find out where it's going, get on that ship. And that'll be good for a year. For a year, your son can go anywhere in the world that a Blue Star ship goes, guaranteed employment and guaranteed good care. And my father said, wow, and came home and told me about it. And I said, wow. And then I got to thinking about it. And then I asked, can Jimmy Rucker come? He was already my running buddy. And they reluctantly added him to the thing. He said, all right, we'll give it for you and Jimmy Rucker. And then Jimmy and I talked, and we were just two little Southern boys, and we decided not to go on a year-long worldwide cruise. That to me is a what if. I'm glad I didn't go if that would have affected me sitting here today talking to you, married to Gigi. But if I could be sitting here talking to you, married to Gigi, I've always wondered what would that have been like? Who would I have met along the way? That's my only sort of regretful what if.
And I, I'm thinking along with you, what would you have replaced with that year? What would you have missed?
Back home or
Yeah.
there.
What at the time, I mean, what were you doing at the time? What was your
Well, I wasn't doing anything of any importance. We hadn't joined Holiday Magic yet.
Okay, that's where I was trying to figure it
Yeah,
out.
no,
So that would have been interesting. Now,
we were
had
looking.
it, impacted how you were going to work with Holiday
Yeah,
Magic or meeting Dr. Napoleon
no,
Hill?
this was working for my father for $100 a week as a
Right,
retail, detail
right.
food broker salesman.
And then
So
your
it wasn't
dad
like I
fired
was
you.
missing anything. I think I was just didn't have the nerve
Oh.
to pack up and go around the world. I've since been all over the world, but I had to pay for it.
Oh, well, that's a big what if. And then you joined the Coast Guard too, so it's
And then
not
I
like you
joined the
were
Coast Guard.
seasick or
Yeah.
anything.
And they shipped me all the way to Cuba, 90 miles from the United States coast. So that wasn't exactly, it was life changing to a degree, but not on the scale of the Blue Star lines. All right, next
I'll be
up,
darned. Yeah, I hadn't heard this story, so thank you.
I don't know why that even crossed my mind, but there are those little nuggets you only think of occasionally. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. We talked about Earl Nightingale last week, so I'll skip over that this time. Earl was a big influence in my life, although I hired him because of his voice and wisdom, etc. And he became the voice of all of our companies. If you were a Stay Power distributor, you'd hear, "Good evening, this is Earl Nightingale with Stay Power." And then he would do his thing, and the next record would be, "Good evening, this is Earl Nightingale with Bob Cummings Vitamins." So on. He was just an overpowering influence. He was, by the way, the most listened to radio voice in the world for a while. He had a radio program. What it was if you signed up for it, a local bank or somebody signed up for it, they sent the radio station a recording, a record, on which were 5-minute cuts, probably 5 or 6 on one side and 5 or 6 on the other. And it was Earl doing a radio program called Our Changing World. And it was heard daily on several times a day in many markets on over 700 radio stations in the United States and Canada. And he was the most listened to radio voice in the world, far exceeding Rush Limbaugh and all the others. Now, granted, he was cheating. It wasn't live every time, but you couldn't get in your car and not hear Earl Nightingale. It was sort of like his good friend Paul Harvey. And now you know the rest of the story. Well, Our Changing World was a similar concept. And so now, if I mention Earl Nightingale, I notice people in their 30s and 40s sort of cock their head. Who's he talking about now? If you were alive in those days, the late 50s throughout the 60s and into the 70s, Earl Nightingale was a voice you knew as well as your own. So, and sharing very wise information, all of which came from The Stranger's Secret, which he wrote for a sales meeting in his insurance company because one Saturday he wasn't going to be there. So he wrote out The Strangest Secret, recorded it, and had it played to them that Saturday morning. That was supposed to be the beginning and end of the message. It turned into the largest selling non-entertainment record in history. And then Earl would laugh and say, "Why is it not entertaining? I'm not dull." And when we shot the video, The Strangest Secret, I happened to be in Chicago when they shot it. They had to shoot it with 3 cameras, one dead on, one to the right, one to the left. And then the editing was done where it faded from one shot to the other, not, click, click, click. It was a slow fade. And it was done to inject movement into the visual because Earl stood behind the lectern and he was a radio guy. He they got him reading off a teleprompter instead of a script in his hand, but he stood like a radio guy and read it off the teleprompter. And one take, he was ready to go home. But when you see it and you see what you think is movement, that's 3 cameras appearing to make him move. On to Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. He worked for us in several seminars. I'm guessing 20. Don't really know, but probably 20 seminars. And we hired him. We hired him because he asked to be hired, because like any speaker, he wanted the income and the exposure, and we were the big deal at the time. We could put 10, 15,000 people in an auditorium on 48 hours notice, and we needed people. That's where Zig Ziglar got famous and Og Mandino got famous and so on down the line. Uh, people trying to get in front of our crowds. And it's also where I met most of those people because I was president of the company. So if you were going to stand in front of one of our big rallies, I had to invite you and approve you and meet you. I didn't put anybody up there sight unseen. So you were already famous, or I had to feel comfortable with you. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale was doing fine without us, but he wanted more exposure. So he asked, or had his agent or somebody asked, to begin appearing. Uh, Reverend Ike came to us the same way. He was a fascinating guy. He's not on the list because we were not close, but I loved hearing him talk. Reverend Ike was really something. Norman Vincent Peale, however, what I really remember about him and love about him, he had deep philosophical lessons, but he taught them in street terms, layman's terms. And what I loved about him was behind the scenes, he was one of the funniest. He was funny from the lectern, but behind the scenes, he's one of the funniest people I ever met, bordering on irreverent. I never heard him cuss. I never heard him tell a dirty story. But there are things that priests do, ministers do, that or don't do, that regular people do. And he got very close to that line. And he loved a good joke. It could be a little blue. He wouldn't tell it, at least I never heard him tell one, but he would laugh uproariously if somebody else told him one, or he was within earshot of them. So part of his charm, I think, without getting into politics, part of Donald Trump's charm is the regular person thinks, well, he's famous and rich, but he understands me. I saw Trump yesterday talking in front of a bunch of coal miners because of his new
I saw
policy.
the same thing. It
Okay.
was it
Do you
was
see,
actually very touching.
did you see the admiration in their face?
I did. I wasn't watching him, I was listening, but I was watching those faces lined up behind him.
Yeah,
And
that's
honestly, there was one guy on the left, I'm pretty sure he was crying.
he's that you can see on their face. He's one of
Yeah.
us. He's a billionaire, major developer in New York, built the modern New York skyline, uh, and he's president of the United States and a multi-billionaire. But he gets us. It was like one of the guys in the group with the helmets on had been picked at random to speak for them. And I thought, and he's looking at him and shaking hands and winking. It's like, I got you, you know, I'm with you, I'm on your side, and so on. Dr. Peale had the ability to do that. He was borderline, his reputation made him borderline godlike, but he was a regular guy who could relate to anybody and didn't make you feel uncomfortable. I don't know if you spent time, there's some priests and ministers and so on, nuns you can be around, and you're uncomfortable because you don't want to say anything that could possibly offend them or in any way dispute, their beliefs, just out of politeness. With Dr. Peale, you didn't have that because he had that one-on-one charm. I got you.
Hmm.
I'm with you. I understand. And I went to his church one day. I had done some work with Lesta, the Lower East Side Teen Association in Bedford Stuyvesant, the great radio guy had a great radio guy had asked me to, he said, well, if you're in an interview, he said, well, if these positive thinking things are right, I got a place you can go try. Barry Farber was his name. If you live in the East Coast, Barry Farber is a radio god to you, or was. You go down to uh, Bedford Stuyvesant and work with this Lesta group. We get in the cab. I said, I took up the challenge. We get in the cab and we're headed to Bedford Stuyvesant in the city. I understand it's come back a bit now, but the city began to look more and more like pictures I've seen of Berlin after the war. And the cab driver pulls over to the curb and says, okay, that'll be, and whatever number of dollars it was. And I looked at the note in my hand. I said, well, we're not there yet. It's still 2 or 3 blocks down. And he said, this is as far as I go. And I thought to myself,
Why?
uh-oh.
What was wrong?
Yeah. So we walked in, and three or four of us walked in, went to work with Lesta. Someday we'll tell that story. It was sort of interesting and rewarding for everybody involved. Anyway, because I'd been there and was working there, I found myself in New York on a Sunday, and we went to I think Collegiate was the name of his church, Collegiate Memorial, something like that. And we walk in, and he's up preaching. Dr. Peale is up preaching, and I walk in the back door and looking for a seat for three or four of us to sit in. And right in the middle of his talk, he said, "Ben Gay, how are you?" I thought, God. And everybody looks around. Dr. Peale knows whoever this is by name and interrupted his sermon. But
Oh,
that was the kind of guy, if I'd been near him, he would have slapped me on the back. He was a cross between a holy man and a stand-up comedian.
I
And
love that.
that at that intersection was his charm.
And you wouldn't think that because I've read his work. I've listened to some audios and I would have, well, I did pick up the humor. I will say that, but I didn't know that. And I'm so glad that you're sharing these really kind of historic figures with us. Yeah, it's
Well,
not
I
that
was in the right place at the
you
right time
were.
and didn't screw up.
Well, there you go. That's a good way to end the show because we are running out of time. I was right place, wrong time, right place, right time, didn't screw up. That's, I'm going to make a plaque out of that and send it to you for Christmas. Ben, you have any final thoughts before we let go? Because next week we're going to pick up again, I think, on Earl Nightingale, Norman Vincent Peale, and I remember a story you told me about meeting Paul Harvey at lunch one time. I'd like to,
I'm sorry, the
bring
sound cut out. Meeting whom?
Paul Harvey.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
that
with
was,
Earl.
well, it was with Earl, I remember.
Yeah.
Okay, so give us some final thoughts, and then we're going to shut this down and pick it up next week.
Well, final thought might be this, and I touched on it earlier. I've been in a place I've met kings and queens and presidents and good guys and bad guys
And
and
astronauts,
astronauts. Yeah, worked
right?
with the astronauts, have shaken the hand of all 12 men who walked on the moon, knew dozens of them up close and personal, attitude coach for Apollo 15, 16, 17. I've met a lot of fascinating people, Charlie Manson in his cell at San Quentin, and just about everybody in between. I don't mean all the names, but all the types in between. And here's what I've discovered. And going down this list of, and then there was Earl Nightingale, and then there was Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, and then there was so and so. They didn't walk on water. They were all, when I got to meet them up close and personal, all regular human beings. They put their pants on. You think you said this a week ago. They put their pants on one leg at a time. Some of them got a little luckier than perhaps their sheer talent would have indicated. All of them were good promoters, but anybody can be a good promoter. So my point is, you don't have to look at in awe and say, I wish I could be Zig Ziglar. Well, no, you don't. I know lots of things about Zig that would cause you not to be Zig Ziglar. He was great at what he did, and maybe you'll never have the Southern charm of Zig Ziglar and the ability, walk and get down on one knee and emote and so on. That's probably not your style, but you can be you, and with the talents you have, you can be as good or better than any of the people I talk about. They were all just regular folks. I've seen them with too much to drink. I've seen them down in the dumps. I've seen some, I don't mean all of them, but several of them. I've seen them cry. I've seen them beg for help. They're all regular folks. They're not a group you can't ever be part of. You can be, and you can be greater. I know a lot of people far more impressive than the people that are famous that I've met in other ways, who many of whom you've never heard of. But I would much rather be one of them than some of the famous people. So if there's a message here this morning, it's yes, you can. You can do it. You can be whatever you want to be. As Dr. Hill said, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And we argued about that because it's not 100% true, but it's close to true. And as Bill Patrick used to say, he was going to put me in a glass cage trailer and take me around to shopping centers all over the United States with a sign on the top of the trailer. If he can do it, anyone can do it.
Right. It really is what you believe. If you think you can't do something, of course you can't do it. Now, I don't use that word can't. I will use the word won't because I don't swim. You know why? Because I'll drown. I float. I don't float. I just sink. So
Yep.
I don't swim, but you'll never hear me say I can't, even though that's the truth. But still, well, listen, thank you everybody for joining us on this episode of the Closers Inner Circle podcast with Denise Griffitts and Ben Gay III. And to stay updated on all of our future episodes, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. You can find us anywhere you consume your favorite podcasts, including Audible. Honestly, we're there. You can't throw a stick without hitting us. So just go to yourpartnersuccessradio.com and subscribe there, and you'll see us every Wednesday on the Closers Inner Circle podcast. Ben, thank you. This was an absolutely fascinating conversation.
Thank you. As always, you're the one that makes it possible.
Well, yeah, there is that. So, I had to do it. You set it up.
Yeah, you say such a gracious
Yeah,
compliment taker.
yeah, that's it. So, listen,
Gigi will
everybody.
say to me from time to time, "You're really great at this." I said, "I'm Ben Gay, for God's sakes."
See, I learned from the best. So, all right, I'll see you next week.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.